Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. Stephen Diamond here, the founder of LifeSkillsMasterclass.com. Wow, do we have a great show planned tonight? We have a very special guest coming on who's going to tell you an amazing story. It's really a story of hope and redemption. This is something that I think we can all relate to. And I think what's even more important about this whole thing is that he's going to talk about an extraordinary experience that he went through. And it's going to help all of us to understand how to manage our emotions, how to manage our thoughts and our feelings when things are out of your control. And I was looking tonight for a guest that could really speak to what it's like not being able to control your life when control is literally taken away from you. I can't think of anything that is more stressful than that. And tonight, my guest, Tony Lynch, was incarcerated. And, we all go through life, we make mistakes. Mistakes are a part of the human experience. None of us will get through this life perfectly. We're all going to make mistakes. And in fact, that's how we grow. That's how life challenges us to be better people. And I can't think of a more dire situation than having all of your freedom taken away from you, having all of the control taken away from you, and being forced into a regimen where you're told when to eat, when to sleep, what to do, how and when. I don't know that I personally would have the strength and the wherewithal to be able to survive a situation like this. So I'd like to introduce you to my buddy, Tony Lynch, who's going to talk to us a little bit about his situation. Hello, Tony. Welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, man. I'll tell you, I'm excited to talk to you tonight. And I thought we just started the beginning. So our viewers might be interested to know that you and I actually, though we've never met before, we actually grew up miles apart from each other. And I'm from a little town in Portsmouth, Virginia. Where are you from?
I'm from a little town in Newport News, Virginia. So right across the water from you.
Right across the bridge.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about how you grew up. What was life like? How did it all get started for Tony?
Wow. I was born in 1974. So it was an interesting time. My mom and dad was around, and you grew up with the big afros and the bell bottoms, skating rinks and things like that, fishing in the Chesapeake Bay, things like that. But my childhood was pretty simple for, I would say, the first 5 years, because I was innocent, very creative child, just a normal child. I played with my sister. I have a sister that's 2 years younger than me. And so we used to play on the playground, seesaws, slides, all of those things, that kids should have when we're growing up, And, we were kids, man. We rode bikes, skateboarded, and things like that. Played with our friends, and my household was very loving. We grew up in poverty. I didn't understand about welfare or anything like that, but we were on welfare, and very poor. My mother was on Section 8. My father, he had just got out of Marines. He was a cook in the Marines, and so I grew up with both of them in a household for the first part of my life. And then at the age of 6, my father and my mother kind of separated, went their own ways. And I guess that's where my journey really actually starts. At the age of 6, I was molested by my neighbor. And no one really believed me. So I had to develop a mindset of there's nobody going to save me, but also maintain that impression on everyone that I'm still a normal kid. So I kept straight A's in school, even though I had this thing in the back of me that I knew had happened. And
And that's
as
very
I,
traumatic for a young child to deal with. In fact, the same thing happened to me, by the way. My parents divorced at 8. I was also molested by someone I knew. Actually, it was a mentor of mine. But that's a very traumatic thing for a child to go through. How did you handle that at 6, 7, 8 years old, with starting out like that?
well, once I realized there was nobody that was going to come and save me, I became my own protector. So when it happened, it almost happened 3 times. The third time when it almost happened, I used what I like to call, now that I understand, reverse psychology. So when it almost happened, I had a little knife. And so I stuck it in the stomach. And I told him, I said, go ahead, scream. Because now no one believes that you did this to me. You're going to have to explain, why is my pants down and you have a knife in your stomach? So go ahead and say something. And I promised myself and my little sister that nothing would ever happen like that ever again. And it never did. And he never said anything because he would have to admit that he had did something wrong.
Right.
And so that's where my mindset started to change. I became quiet. I used to love to draw all the time, and people loved my drawings, but they never understood why I used to draw the things I drew. And
Right.
it was me expressing myself, right? It was just me expressing myself, the pain that was going on. I became a lone wolf at a very early age. Because after that, I still hung out with my friends, but I never really talked to them. I still went to the beach, Virginia Beach, and swam, fished, and all those different things. But at the end of the day, it was just me. It was just me left alone with my
It
thoughts.
is. It
I
is. And
understood.
not only that, but you didn't realize it at the time. But what this experience really was teaching you was self sufficiency. It
Right.
taught you that you are the only one that is going to get through this, and you learn in those situations to depend on yourself. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, very much so.
And that's
And
a skill. That's a
yes,
skill, and that skill will carry you all the way through life.
and it did. It really did. Like I said, after that, I grew up. Not too many more instances. I mean, I did fight a lot. I played sports and everything, but was never really into it. When I got into martial arts, I love martial arts. I loved it. Right. Almost took the state championship. I got disqualified from that because I let my anger get the best of me. And then from there, I got in trouble in school. I got expelled in the 10th grade, self-preservation. And because I had gotten involved in a lot of things. I got involved because I wanted to make some money. I wanted to wear the nice clothes and things like that. And when you don't have too many opportunities, you kind of look at the people around you, and you kind of learn from them. So I learned at an early age, selling drugs, carrying a gun for protection and things like that. So you kind of have to have a survival of the fittest mindset at an early age.
And,
But my
and do
mentors
you
were,
think? Do you? I'm sorry. There's a little delay between you and I, and so it sounds like I'm interrupting you, but I apologize. But I want to ask you a question. Do you think that you went into the martial arts because of a need deep down inside to protect yourself?
oh yeah, oh yeah. But I found out that I love fighting. I loved fighting, and so it was a way. But that my mother said that it was a great way for me to control that and to have that discipline growing
Right,
up. So I
right.
dedicated a lot of my life into learning kung fu, learning how. I mean, just learning everything I possibly could to be the best that I possibly could. Because at that time, I thought I was going to be a world championship like Bruce Lee. Right? He was one of my idols growing
Right.
up, and I used to watch old kung fu movies, and I was always intrigued by it. And I was like, I wonder
So,
if I could reach that level.
so it's fair to say that you started out in life with anger issues because of trauma, severe trauma that happened to you early in your life. And that led you to anger issues. Sports didn't really appeal to you because it wasn't enough to get rid of that anger, to deal with that anger, but you went into martial arts because that allowed you to fight, which allowed you to feel like you were able to protect yourself. And it also helps you to deal with your anger. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
That's a fair assessment. It really was.
And so that was your early years. That took you up through your teenage years. Talk to me a little bit about what led to your incarceration.
Oh, wow. 1992, I moved to Denver, Colorado. And I was leaving one situation and ran right back into another situation where I was trying to walk away from the gangs because I had a daughter at the time, and I ran right back into it. And once I ran right back into it, I had to make a hard decision. I said, you know what, I can't have my daughter or my girlfriend around me at the time because I know where this road is going to lead, and so I have to become a different individual. And so in 1994. I was really deep. I was so deep into it. I was hanging with some friends of mine. We were drinking, and I was walking home. The cops had already been trying to bust me for drugs for a long time, and they just couldn't get me. They caught me drunk. They beat me up, and I woke up in jail with drug charges. And it was the first time drug court had ever been opened in Denver, Colorado. And with my first charge, they sentenced me to 5 years. That was 1994. And wow. So, and that's how that happened. And no matter what
can I ask what the charge was? Was the charge dealing drugs, or was it possession?
Possession. It was possession, even though they never produced the drugs. I know they never produced the drugs.
What was your drug of choice at that time, Tony?
Marijuana. I was never into drugs like that. I never did coke or heroin or anything. It just never was my thing. Marijuana and drinking, and that's how everything kind of unfolded for me. They caught me. I was drunk walking home, and bam, there it is. Take a little beat down, and next thing you know, I'm waking up in jail, and they're telling me, "We got you now. We got you now." And no matter what I could say or anything, like I even hired a lawyer and still got 5 years. They maxed me out on my first ever drug charge. And so then from there, was in county. I went to prison. When I was in prison, it was a totally different mentality. So that lone wolf mentality carried me over. I didn't want to talk to no one. My family is all in Virginia, so they didn't have to worry about me too much, and I didn't want them to worry about me too much. I cut off all ties of the outside world.
Yeah, I understand that. Right? I did the same thing in the heat of my mental and emotional breakdown. I also did the same thing. It's easier that way, and basically what happens is, we as human beings only have enough bandwidth to process so much bad stuff. So when you hit that limit and you can't process anymore, your brain turns it off. And that's when you start getting rid of everybody, because you just simply can't process it. You just don't have the capacity, the emotional, mental, spiritual, or even physical capacity to deal with that kind of unprocessed trauma.
That's very true. That's very true. And when you carry things like that on the inside, there's two things that happen that a reality sets in. One, you cannot move away from the people that you once had to fight out there on the streets. You're now in a confined space. And so when I went through the first prison, which was Buena Vista, we used to call that the Battle Dome. And that's where all your gangbangers went. So everyone that you had a problem with on the outside, you now going to face them on the inside. Only difference is that you don't have the opportunity to go this place. You don't have all of that. So it's just you and them. And I chose me. What
other option do you really have, Tony?
Well, you have a lot of options. A lot of people they used to do what I like to call click up. So in there is it's a lot of politics. You know, races stick with each other. You got the white supremacists, the black guerrilla family. You have the Bloods, the Crips, and so forth and so forth. And so you would normally go and click up with the people that are familiar that you're familiar with. So with me, it would have been the Crips. And but I didn't do that. I didn't want to have anything to do with them. I was in there to do my time, not theirs. And whatever happened, I didn't want anything to do with it. But it does not stop things from happening. You know, you're going to see these things. And once you realize that you're now caged up like an animal, and no one cares nothing about you, nothing, no one. It's just you.
Talk to me about that. So when the cell door shuts and you suddenly realize that no one cares and that it's just you, what do you do, Tony? Where do you turn? What goes through your mind?
You let go of any hope of ever coming out.
Really?
You do. Because a lot of people don't.
You only had a 5-year sentence, so you knew you were going to get out at some point.
At some point. But what happens in that 5 years, you can get killed. I've seen a lot of people get shamed. I've seen people get stabbed in the libraries. I've seen people get beat, get their butts whipped in the showers. I mean, these things do happen. These are the rules of the inside, right?
Right.
It's just you. You have to, if they're going to cage you up like an animal, you now have to become the animal. My goal was if I'm going to become that animal, I'm going to become the animal that I need to be in order to survive. It's survival of the fittest. So whatever I need to do, that is what I'm going to do. If I have to walk around with a shank, if I have to beat you on the yard with a dumbbell, that's what I'm going to do. Because I know that at the end of the day, I made a choice to run solo. That lone wolf mentality has always been with me because I'm the one who can trust me. You know, why would I put my life in someone else's hand when the person that I put it in, they could possibly take it from me? So your friends become your enemies in a lot of cases. And when you have that mentality, you have no friends.
And remind everyone how old you were at this time.
I was 24.
You were 24 years old. So really just a really young man who's just starting out in life and doesn't have a tremendous amount of life experience except on the streets. And you're thrown into this crazy situation that would just be impossible for someone like me to deal with. I honestly have thought about this since you and I first started talking about your story. And I don't know that I could survive that situation. Tell me, what kind of support did you receive while you were in prison, or was there any?
There's no support in there. I mean, it sounds good, but there's no support in there. Once you become state property, they treat you as such. You know, you are their property. Yeah, you are their property, and they would do to you what they want to do to you. I mean, I've seen cops give beat downs to inmates and things like that. They just treated us like crap, man. You know, you got to get told what to do every time. You get told when to eat, when to wake up, when to go to sleep, and things like that, or when to get locked down. Because they lock you down at night until the morning time. So you don't have any of that. You don't wear your own clothes. You have to wear state issue clothes. You have to pretty much abide by their rules for the most part, but you also have to abide by the rules and while you're incarcerated on the inside, because the cops have their rules and the inmates, we have ours. And so
I imagine that going through all of this on the inside, at some point you start going within and start trying to develop coping mechanisms to survive this. And I know you talked about becoming the animal because you're caged, and the only option of survival is to become the beast that you need to be in order to just continue living. So talk to me a little bit about the coping mechanisms. How did you deal with this amount of trauma and stress?
I resorted back to my fighting days. That was my coping mechanism. We're going to fight. We're going to fight. If this is what they want from me, then this is what I have to do to survive. With the goal of, I pretty much just wanted to be left alone. But that doesn't always work out that way. So yeah, I went inside and I had to hold on to that beast. Like, so the innocent child in me, all of that trauma and things like that, I promised myself no one will ever hurt me again. And I stayed true to that promise by any means necessary. So if it meant that if I had to fight 6 or 7 people, I would do that. If it meant that I had to fight every day, 3 times a day, I would do that. Because that was what was required, right? I had to keep my head on a swivel, because
a lot of people don't realize that prison has its own set of rules and regulations that do not apply to the outside world. It is its own unique bubble.
Right. And that's exactly what it is. So you can either become a victim or you can become a survivor. I've seen a lot of people become victims. I've seen friends turn on each other. I've seen all of that stuff. I've heard people getting raped in prison. So those things do happen. Yeah, they definitely do happen. And it happens a lot more frequently than what people think. And it only happens to those people that come in there and they're afraid. And so when you've been in there for quite some time, like when you're in there in a lifer and you get a young man that comes in there that don't know nothing from anything, he wants to attach himself to someone who's going to protect him, not knowing that the person who's protecting them is building up a racket of things that you're now going to owe him. And if you don't have the means, he's not really looking for a means of you paying him back. He's looking for you to pay him back in other ways.
He wants to keep you in debt because he's going to make you his own little slave.
Exactly. And then he's going to slave you out to other people for his own benefits. And I've seen that happen several times. It's horrible that it happens to people. But again, some people aren't cut out for it. And they make stupid mistakes and end up in there with us, and they become victims. So not only do they have to, deal with that trauma that they're in there, but they no longer can go to their families and things like that because you just became someone else's property. And so for whatever time that you're in there, yeah, you're property.
Tell me something. What was the most difficult aspect about being incarcerated for you? What was the one thing that was just really, really tough to deal with?
When they put me in solitary confinement for 2 years.
2 years?
Yep. They put me in solitary confinement for 2 years. And this is after being transferred to different prison systems and things like that. They finally just was like...
a result of your fighting problems?
No, this is a result of them blaming stuff on me. I got blamed for prison riots. I got blamed for all kinds of stuff. And once I realized what they were doing, they were going to make me do my full 5. So on a 5-year sentence, you would normally do 2 and some change. You get out, you have parole. Well, every time I went up for parole, I had new charges. So they always denied my parole. And so they got tired of transferring me around because it was the same thing everywhere. And so the last 2 years, they put me in solitary confinement, thinking that it was going to either break me mentally and keep me institutionalized. Because when you're in there, you're left alone with your thoughts. Everything.
Paint that picture for us, Tony. Tell us what most of us will never experience that. So paint the picture and tell us what it's like to be there by yourself with the door shut and nothing else.
There's no windows. There's no clocks. There's no sense of time. They turn the lights on and off when they want to. You're left in there with your own demons in this 6x10 cell, and it's just you. It is just you. You try to do everything that you can. You work out, you read books and things like that. And that only helps pass the time for a little bit, in general pop, you can probably get a TV or something like that, but in solitary confinement, you don't have any of that. And when it comes down to it, they bring your shower to your cell. So you step outside your cell and you take a shower. You may get maybe an hour a week of going outside, but then you have a little cage that you can walk around in, and that's pretty much it. And you're right back in there again. So the mental toughness that you have to get through those times, because you don't know when you're going, you don't know what day it is. You don't know what month it is. You just know that you're in there. Time stands still. And that is the hardest part when you're trapped in here. You want to break down and cry. And I have broken down and cried several times when I was in there, wondering where I went wrong. How did I get in this situation, right? But then there was a side of me that was going, if they open up the doors, I'm just going to attack the guards.
Now, Tony, one of our Facebook members has a great question. I'm going to put it on the screen here. They want to know, why do you think they specifically targeted and blamed you?
Because I used to fight the cops all the time. I used to fight the cops because as a game banger, you want to live up to the hype, but I didn't want to live up to anyone else's hype, and they could never catch me. That was the whole thing. They would see me walking around with all blue and stuff on, and I would flip them off, and run from them all the time. And half the time they would catch me in a dark alleyway, and I beat them up. I would beat them up. So yeah, did you feel some sort of way about that? And every time they ever tried to catch me with drugs, they never could. They tried to catch me with guns, they never could. And so cop told me one time before that happened, before I was incarcerated, he goes, "We're going to get you. We're going to get you." And I looked at him. I said, "Well, you got me now. So what do you want to do? Let's go fighting again."
Right.
So it wasn't that they just targeted me or blamed me. They just, like with anything, with any game banger, if you have a rap sheet,
right?
If you have some sort of rap sheet, when you go to court, is your word against theirs. And if they can put these charges on you, it makes it harder for you to prove your innocence.
Right.
And sometimes,
like you said, when you go up for a parole or something like that, they just look at your file and they go, "This guy's still causing problems. He's staying."
Right, exactly. So to them, I was a menace. I was not fit to be in society, but they couldn't max me out anymore because by being my first ever drug charge, you can only give me 5 years. That's it. Now, anything after that, the time goes up. So when they maxed me out, and it's just the way that it was, and I accepted it for what it was. It was what you would call expected. It was expected that these things was going to happen. You're going to end up in jail at some point in your life, right? Whether if you get caught by your own doing or the cops do it, it was something normal for us. Right. We knew that this was a possibility. Right. If the cops didn't catch you with anything, they throw you a beat down, you're going to end up with some charges, right? And you can argue it all you want, but it's my word against the cops.
I have a really good friend, a guy that I've known for over 20 years. He's Black, and he has a young son who is now, I think he's 9 years old. And he told me that he just recently had to sit his son down at 9 years old and have a conversation with him about the police. Yes. And about how to handle himself if he is stopped by a white cop and what to do. And I just thought to myself, I was like, what is this world coming to when you have to sit an 8-year-old boy down and explain to him that simply because of the melanin in his skin, he will experience life vastly different from everybody else.
Yes.
And I honestly can't even imagine having that conversation with an 8-year-old. But he told, and I asked him why. I said, "Don't you think eight's a little young?" And he goes, "No." He said,
Mm,
"Really, it should have started when he was 5." He was
exactly.
like, "But," he was like, I need to start ingraining this in him. He needs to start understanding right now that life for us is different."
Yeah.
And the whole thing happened because I was in a car with him and we got stopped by the police. And he said to me, "If you were driving, we would have never gotten stopped."
Hmm. And
And
that's the truth. That is the truth. I was taught at a very early age that, when you encounter the cops, you make sure that your hands are visible. You make sure, you do whatever they say. If you driving in a car with someone, if they tell, hey, put your hands out the window, you do not move, make any sudden movements, because they will kill you. I
yes, they
had to
will.
teach that to my son at the age of 5. So he understood, being a young man, and he was always, my son used to always wonder, why do I have to be taught this? Because I want you to be safe. I want you to come home to me at the end of the day. So I have to teach you these things. It doesn't matter if you have white friends or anything like that, your white friends will be treated different from you.
Mm.
And so I never wanted him to take these things
That's what
personally.
that's got to affect you on a deep, deep human level. It's
But yeah,
got to affect you.
well, yeah, when you live in a world where the color of your skin weaponizes people against you, whether you're
Oh,
innocent or not, you don't have the option of saying no. No, you can't do this to me. No, you don't have that option. Because for one, as soon as you do that, they're going to look at you, go, "Oh, you're trying to be smart." And then next thing you know, now you got to get a beat down, right? And you may not even go to the hospital when they do it. You may just go straight to jail. So now you have to deal with these things. This is the world that we live in. And now that I'm older, I look back at the laws that they've passed, and you realize that there are Jim Crow rules all throughout it. And they're taught to target us as
yeah, it's
minorities.
just the system is designed against you. There's no
Right.
question about that. I mean, we've seen that in the last couple years with everything that's gone on with George Floyd, or even going all the way back to Trayvon Martin, and even Tawana Broadley, if you want to go even further back than that. But there's so many cases that it's undeniable what's happening now, and that's just the reality. So there you were in prison, you were doing your time, and eventually it came time for you to release. Talk to me about transitioning back into society. um, what happened when you got out? Because I imagine that the experience that you went through, as traumatic as it was, changed you fundamentally
Oh yeah.
at your core as a human being. Talk to me a little about that.
Well, when you get out, there's no program to help you transition. Now there is, but back then they gave you $50 and a bus ticket.
Bus ticket.
And a bus ticket, and you went back to the city that you was from. Now you don't have anything. There's nobody out there trying to help you or anything like that. So you go back to doing what you know. You have to, now. Now that I'm out here, I have to go back to another set of survival mode. Now I'm just in a bigger environment. So now things have changed. The faces have changed, right? And so you go back. I went back to my hood. I went back to the Crips, my gang that I was from. And so it was like, I got to make some money. I got to get some clean clothes. I got to get a roof over top of my head. I got to get in a place where I can get some decent food and things like that. Because 5 years of eating prison food, your stomach is never the same when you get out. So you're sick, and but you can't let that hold you up. You have to stay focused on surviving. Nothing really changes. Nothing really changes. So then from there, now that you have these essentials, now I have to get the main essentials. Now I have to figure out who has the drugs, so I can go buy me a supply, so I can start making some money. Now I got to get a gun, because now I got to protect myself, right? Because you're right back out there again. Now people have guns now. So you have to have those things in order to walk through. You have to have some sort of vehicle to get around in. So all of those different things played a factor into transitioning back out, and you still have the mentality of being institutionalized, but
Explain to our viewers what that is. Talk to me about the mentality of being institutionalized.
institutionalized is the mindset of being trapped forever. Like, you have, now that you've experienced this way of life of being incarcerated, it's kind of hard to unlock your mind from there, because all you have for that time that you're in there is the thoughts, the memories, and the actions that you had to take while you're in there. So how do you implement those things into the world, on the outside? It's hard. You still don't trust anyone, right? You still have a sort of way about you, to where you don't let people get too close to you, because
Right.
you don't know. You don't know
That's
what's going
dangerous.
to be. Right. It's dangerous, right? You have to stay trapped. Your emotions have to stay inside of you. They can't come out, because when you come out, now you have more people looking at you. So as soon as you break down and go, man, that was the most horrible experience that I've ever had, they're going to look at you, oh, you're a punk and this, that, and other. So you don't want to be judged by no one else. So you look at it and you go, I just have to suck it up. I have to deal with it the best way that I know how, but I also have to survive. So your humanity is pretty much gone. And so for me, my mentality was, I'm a lone wolf. So I'm better off alone, because why not be alone if I can't trust anyone?
Did you leave the gang?
Eventually, yes. Eventually, I did leave the game, early 2000s. And there was an incident that happened when I got out, and I was shot. I was shot several times.
Wow.
And I went to war with these guys. And once I realized that the people that was supposedly been my homeboys, I was the one going to war with these dudes, and they was nowhere around. I realized then that I was done. I mean, I had over 20 years in it, man. 20 years. And I'd given everything to it. I was dedicated to it. And so when I finally made the decision, after all of that had happened, I went to them. I said, look, man, I'm done. They said, what do you mean? I said, I'm done. And they go, well, there's only one way out. I gave them my gun. I said, here's my gun. I said, but either which way it goes, today I am done. I am walking. You're either going to kill me or I'm walking away. And so the agreement is that if I walked away, I was never to return. I wasn't going to have the backing out on the street. So even though I left that particular gang, the surrounding gangs, like my rivals, my enemies, and things like that, they don't care nothing about that. They just remember what you've done. So now you have to fix all of that again. And so what I did is that when I walked away, I went homeless for 2 years, like strictly homeless, and that was
In
probably
what city?
In Denver, Colorado. So I left the gangs. I had a backpack. I didn't turn back around. I didn't sell drugs. I wasn't out there robbing anyone anymore. I faced it head on, and it was the hardest 2 years. Hardest 2 years of being homeless that I ever encountered. And I've been homeless before, but this was the hardest one, because
Now, I think you've answered my next question, but I was going to ask you, what were some of the major challenges that you faced re-entering society? But that is certainly one. I've been homeless myself. A lot of people don't believe me when I say that, but it's true. And so I understand very clearly, what you're talking about. But what were some of the other challenges aside from being homeless, as if that's not enough? But what were some of the other challenges that you faced as you re-entered society?
wow. Figuring out what the next move for me was going to be, and where I was going to go, because all my family was in Virginia, and I wasn't going to run home to them. I didn't want no one to
Same
save
thing
me.
with me. Same thing
Yeah.
with me. I was 18 years old and moved out to Las Vegas with a friend. And he met a girl and took off with her and left me stranded. And I ended up on the street.
Mhm.
And the very same thing, I could have picked up the phone at any time and called my dad, and he would have sent me a bus ticket.
Right.
This we're talking about 1988.
Okay.
But he will sent me a bus ticket to come back to Virginia, but my pride would not allow me to do that.
And that's what it was. I could not. For one, I didn't want my family to know what was going on with me. I hadn't
Yeah,
had
same
contact
here.
with my family in over, and close to, at that time, 26, 27 years. And
Yeah,
so I didn't want, for one, I didn't want my family to know what was going on. Two, I knew that what I was going through, I had to face. I had to pull myself up and I had to figure it out. There was a lot of things that I didn't know. Like, I never knew that people lived a good life. I never knew that people lived in homes and not have to worry about people kicking in their doors. I never knew that people didn't have those struggles, right?
right.
People could go to work, not have to worry about being shot at or having to get into fights or anything like that, not worrying about who's going to try to kill you next. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know
Right.
any of that.
Why would you?
Exactly. Well, I never sought it out. I never
Right.
sought it out. I knew one way of life, and that was what it was for me. And so, transitioning, during coming up on those 2 years, I just remember I was sleeping under a bridge. I have what you may see right here, this T-shirt. That's all I had. Just that. I had a T-shirt, a pair of pants. I hadn't showered in weeks. I hadn't eaten anything in probably maybe about even longer than that. So trying to get little things out of the trash can so I can eat or something like that. Didn't have any money, didn't have anything. And just one night, it was a blizzard out, and I was under the bridge with this other homeless guy. He was kind enough to share his wild turkey and his jacket with me. And in the middle of the night, I dozed off. It was just like a scene from a movie. We got the big old metal trash can out there on fire and everything, to try to keep warm. And this voice just came to me and said, "Get up." And I just
Get up.
remember, yes, just say, "Get
Just
up,
get up.
get up." And when I looked around, because I thought it was maybe the guy, and I could hear him just as clear as I'm talking to you. And it just said, "Get up." And it kept repeating. I finally got up. And it said, "Walk this way." And in the middle of this blizzard, I just walked, and I couldn't tell you how long I walked, but I wasn't cold or anything. Now, mind you, all I have on is a T-shirt. That's all.
Right.
And I got to a
I don't
certain
know how you
place.
survived. I don't know how you even made it through the cold of the night. Tony, I have a great question I want to ask you. There's a couple actually Facebook question. I'm going to put it on the screen. Our first one says, "Are you angry because of what you've gone through? And if so, how did you manage or work through your anger?" Such a great question. Whoever posted that, thank you so much. Tony, talk to us.
No, I'm not angry. I'm
Why?
humbled.
I think most people would be. I would be. I would be so freaking angry at the
And
world, at everything. Why are you not angry?
because it was easy for me to get angry. See, anger will put me back in a situation again, right? It's easy to go out there and put yourself in a situation where you go right back to prison because that's an easy thing to do. When you're humble, when you let the situation humble you, you can learn from it. So anger no longer plays a role in that because I didn't want that anymore. I managed
Right.
it because I wanted something different. I wanted something different. It destroyed, my pride was already destroyed. There's nothing else that you can take away from me. So if I
Right.
hold myself to the situation will provide a way for me. And so once I submitted to it, it kept me in a state of humility, and I became
You know,
appreciative.
I there's a quote that I learned when I was a young boy, and it's taken me around the world. And the quote is, "Take bold action, and unseen forces will come to your aid." And that's
Exactly,
exactly what you did. You listened
exactly.
to that inner voice. That voice told you to get up and just take that first step. You didn't know how, you didn't know why, you didn't know where you were going to go, but you listened to that inner voice and it
Mhm.
lifted you up out of despair. And you took that first step, and then unseen forces in the form of resources and different opportunities or different options presented themselves to you. Would you say that that's accurate?
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened. That
It
night,
always does. And that's
yeah,
taken me around the world. That quote literally has fueled my entire existence, because every time I get down and every time I start to beat myself up and every time I start to feel like that I'm worthless and that negative dialogue starts to go in my head, which it does often, um, I always stop myself and bring myself back to center and remember that all I have to do is be present moment aware. Just bring myself back to this moment. Don't think about yesterday. Don't think
right.
about tomorrow. Just bring yourself back to this moment. And once you're present moment, then I remind myself, just take bold action and let the unseen forces come to my aid. And they
Hmm.
always do. We have another Facebook comment that I want to put up here, and it's really nice. It says, "I'm so proud of you for working your program on making yourself a better person. I'm surprised that you never knew a peaceful home environment. I hope that you're doing good." So you're doing great. You're thriving,
I
and
am.
and there are so many good things that you are doing for the world that we live in, but also um, your life has truly transformed. You
Yes.
started out really rough, but let's talk about where you are today. So
Yes.
let's tell everyone we're running short on time. So I want to get this in. So talk to me a little bit about how you took that adversity, that first section of your life that would kill any normal human being. I don't know how you survived. And then you used it. You used it to fuel you to do good in the world. Talk to me.
Yes. Thank you for the comment. I am truly blessed. I am now. Um, I became a servant. I became a servant to helping other men like myself that have been through some crazy stuff, that have gone through loss, and Lord knows, I've experienced my fair share of loss. But it does my heart good to see the next man can benefit from the things that I've gone through, because I realize now that my life had nothing to do with me. It
Right.
was part of the journey, that was part of the process of me becoming who I am today. I have a
Right.
nonprofit, I have a charitable organization. I'm connected with people from across the world. I host a podcast, um, and I
I was
get
on it.
exactly. We had a beautiful conversation, man. Beautiful conversation. But I get the opportunity to live within my gift. So, there is always hope. No matter what you're going through, if you allow yourself to go through the process, there's always something on the other side. You may not see it at the moment, but there's always something on the other side. Look at your situation, learn from it, to extract information from it, become a better individual, and give it to someone else that is going through the same things that you've gone through. It's the
Right.
best feeling in the world. It is truly the best feeling in the world.
And Tony, let me ask you this, because I know this is true in the work that I do.
Mhm.
A lot of people are confused about me. They always ask me, you were this magician for, 28, 30 years of your life, touring around the world with lions and tigers and all this kind of stuff. And they don't know how I got here. And they don't understand why they should listen to me about stress and anxiety management and things like that. And I always tell people that I learned through my therapy. I went through a tremendous amount of just about every kind of therapeutic method and model that there is out there. I've pretty much gone through it. I spent 20 plus years, closer to 25 years in therapy. And I think one of the biggest things that I learned through that experience was that if I truly wanted to heal, there was no greater way than being in service of other people.
Yes.
Where the true healing for each one of us comes is when we
Yes.
dedicate our lives to help other people overcome what we ourselves have lived through. Sometimes all you need is that comforting person that will just, who's walked that path before you, to just hold your hand and say, look, this is the next step. It's going to
Exactly.
be okay. And that's why I
Exactly.
created Life Skills Masterclass, was because I encountered so many people who didn't know where to turn and they didn't know what the next step was in the healing process. And
Mhm.
so, talk to me a little bit about that with you and your situation.
Well, the healing process for me was, after I lost my parents and my brother and my son. The
Your
healing
son,
process. Yeah, my son. He was 8 when he passed away. He passed away almost 7 years ago. The healing process for me was quite difficult, but it was well worth it. And I now look at the blessing in it because I got 8 years with him, whereas some people don't even get that. So
right?
I can take that and look at that blessing. As much as I miss my son, I know that what I do now, I leave a legacy that he can look down on me and go, I'm proud of you, Dad. My parents can look at me and go, I'm proud of you, son. My younger brother can look at me and go, hey, big bro, you got this now, right? And that keeps me going. But it's also the people that are around me. They keep me going because they, as much as they want to believe that I inspired them, they inspired me just as much. And their
Mhm.
support and everything that I do, I wouldn't trade that for the world. I couldn't trade
Neither
it
would
for the
I.
right.
Neither would
So
I. You know,
I would.
this group, this Facebook group, the Life Skills Masterclass coaching group that we're broadcasting in right now, that is the purpose of this group. The purpose of this group is to develop a community of like-minded people who are there for each other in times of need. I really want people to connect, and because I know the importance and understand the value in human connection. And
Yeah.
when we stop looking at each other in terms of color and we start looking for each other in terms of commonality,
Yes.
I always tell people, shift your mindset. Instead of focusing on what separates us and makes us unique, focus on what brings us together and what we all have in common, because there's less than 1% of our DNA that makes us different. The
Yes.
rest of it is identical.
Yes.
So that means we're all pretty much the same.
Yes.
And our little monkey brains are hardwired to see the distinction and not the commonality. I spend a lot of time in my coaching program deprogram, deprogramming people who think that way, and get them to see focus on what makes us alike. Because when you begin to see people that way, your world begins to change. Your world opens up, it broadens. There are more opportunities, there are more incredible experiences, and you begin to see all of those things that you can attach yourself to. Did you
Mhm.
find that now you run an organization called memoriesofus.org?
Yeah.
Memoriesofus.org.
Yes.
Talk to me about the work that you do there. What's the purpose?
I provide grief support to men, just like myself, and that's what it was. It was created because being a male, I was always taught to suppress, not express. I was always taught to protect myself, not to let other people in, not to trust and things like that. And so, once you've been stripped of the things that you love the most, primarily my son, right?
Right.
And I wanted to connect. Not I wanted to connect with other men for a few reasons. One is that I wanted to learn, how did you do it? Maybe what you've gone through. Maybe it can help me as well. But two, I wanted to build a community of men like myself where we supported each other, where um, we wasn't afraid to speak, and we wasn't afraid to express our emotions. We wasn't
Be your
afraid.
authentic self.
Right. You can be yourself. You can be your authentic self and not have to worry about it. Right. But it grew into something more than that. It grew, this community grew into like a brotherhood, and I was able to just follow my heart and let it grow into what it is today. And then from there it branched out. And as someone who does grief work, as a male grief worker, there's not too many of us out there. And I thought to
No.
myself, well, grief is lonely, right? Grief is lonely, but grief work is even lonelier because you're taking in so much, but you don't have anyone to talk to because of the language that we speak. And so
Right.
that gave birth to a global grief conference, and then from there it gave birth to a global grief network, to where now I have colleagues and we can talk and feel supported, and not feel so weird when we're out there. And it's such a beautiful blessing to be able to take those experiences. I tell people, my experiences are yours. Take what you need from me. I give it freely. I will give it.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
what I have is yours, because I can't carry this thing with me. This gift that I was giving, and the understanding that everything I've ever experienced was never about me, even though I had to experience it. It was to give to others.
Right.
That's what it's about. I identified what I'm supposed to do in this world, and that's the agreement, right? You're supposed to find what you're supposed to do, and then you're supposed to give it away because it's not yours. I remember a quote
Right.
one time I heard. The guy said, what you're carrying is not yours. You owe it to me. So I move as if I owe it to you, because I
Right.
do. I'd be a
Yeah.
fool if I carried to the grave with me. The graveyard is the richest place in the world. I don't want to
Yeah.
contribute to that. I want it
Yeah.
said, I want my tombstone to say, all used up. All used up.
Right.
Nothing else left. Everything inside of me belongs to you, if you want it. And I'm willing to give it to you. I'm willing to walk with you in your hardest days, because I want to give you the thing that I didn't have.
Yep.
I want to get that.
I remember a very specific day in my healing journey, and I was in therapy this day, and I was having a conversation with my therapist, and she asked me what my ultimate goal was for life, for my life. She said, "What do you want out of life? What is it? What is your ultimate goal? Where is this journey leading to?" And I really stopped and thought about that, because I wanted to answer it as honestly as I could. And here's what I came up with. I don't think that I'm the guy that's going to change the world, but I know that I have the wherewithal inside of me to change people one heart at a time.
Yes.
And I thought, if I can just make somebody else's journey a little easier to bear, then I'm okay with that.
Me too.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
Because that's putting that ripple out into the universe that is just going to spread and spread and spread. And when you do good and you put that energy out there, it just rides the wave, and it's touching people all along the journey. And you're doing the exact same thing. This grief counseling that you are doing with these desperate men who don't know where to turn in the worst possible moment of their life. I just recently lost my sister, and I'm writing another book. Those of you out there who know me know that I have my first book here, which was all about my journey with stress and anxiety and OCD. But I'm writing another book right now that talks about what happened to me 7 years ago. I was in a horrible accident, and I died 3 times. I had to be resuscitated, once at the scene, once on the operating table in the trauma unit. And then when they woke me up out of a medically induced coma, I coded and went into respiratory failure. And it was that night that I had the full near-death experience, transitioning to the other side. And through that experience, I came back a very confused human being, because I didn't understand what I had experienced. I didn't know if it was real or if it was imagined. I didn't know, if it was the drugs that they were pumping in me or if it really happened. I was so confused. It's taken me a long time, years, to figure it out. And I'm finally writing the book to describe that experience. But one of the interesting things was when my sister passed away just recently, last year, I had the opportunity to be on the other side of the bed because I had experienced before her what it was like to be in that bed,
Right.
in that hospital bed, dying. I knew that experience. And when she passed, I was standing at the foot of her bed with my sister, my other sister, and the two of us watched her take her last breath. And I had the unique experience of being able to understand what was happening in that process on both sides.
Exactly.
And so there's so much about this world for us to continue learning. I continue learning every day. And I look towards people like you who have real life experience and who are doing good in this world, because you are, Tony. You're doing a tremendous service to the universe, to the world, to every life that you touch. You are inspiring people. You're helping them through grief, the darkest times of their lives. And I truly and honestly can't think of a better mission, a better purpose for you. There's so much more I would love to talk to you about. We're running out of time, but
Okay.
I want to let you know that I feel your journey. And I know that there are people watching this broadcast right now who are going to relate with you and who are going to really understand your story and see themselves through the experience that you've been through. Tell people how they can get in touch with you. I believe that you have an Instagram that is Men's Grief Support. Is that correct?
Yes, they can find me on Instagram, Men's Grief Support. I'd also have a private Facebook group, and it's Memories of Us, where the men, we come together and we support each other on there. You can also find me on LinkedIn as Tony Lynch. But also, you can have access to everything that we're doing up there. I just co-authored a book, looking to write a book, and so. The journey for me is just now starting, and I welcome you. If you want to come on this journey with me, come have fun with me. Enjoy.
Listen, we're definitely going to have you back. We're definitely going to have you back because there's so much more to your story. Unfortunately, in this format, we just didn't have a chance to get to all of it. I literally have pages of questions for you that are left unanswered. But we can always do part two. And I'd actually love to invite you to do a special session on the inside of Life Skills Masterclass, just for the members on the inside of the course, because I think that there are some deeper topics that you and I could get into that would really benefit the members and would also help people understand their journey just a little bit better. Tony, I can't thank you enough. It's really been an amazing
I appreciate the opportunity. I do appreciate the opportunity, and I would say, let's make it happen. Let's make it happen. Let's change some people's lives. Let's give them hope, and bless them with the things that we understand. And let's make it happen, man. Let's do it.
And Tony, I think if anybody takes one thing away, and I'm going to give you a chance to answer this question too, but from my perspective, I want people to take away from this little conversation tonight that no matter where you started in life, no matter what challenges you have in your life, there is always hope, and you are far more resilient than you could ever possibly imagine. Even when you think that you're about to die, your story might not be finished.
Exactly. And I would tell people, if you ever have the opportunity to leave someone better than what you found them, take that opportunity, because you never know. You may be that person's blessing. Regardless of what you're going through or anything like that, become someone else's blessing, because then you become blessed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you just pass it on and it keeps going. Tony
Exactly.
Lynch, thank you, my friend. It's memoriesofus.org. You can find him on Instagram at Men's Grief Support. Please check out the important work that Tony is doing. I have an exciting announcement that I'm going to announce next month in the group. When I announce that, I will give you a little hint. It has something to do with prisons. So when I make this big announcement, Tony, I'd love to have you back on and talk about the program. And I think that we'll continue our conversation. Thank you so much, my friend. Be well to you. Be well to everyone who's watching the broadcast today. I'm Stephen Diamond, the founder of LifeSkillsMasterclass.com. Check us out. Thanks, my friend. We'll see you next time.
Thank you. Thank you.